No matter how hard you try, there are certain fundamental laws of the universe that you just can't change. Gravity, electromagnetism, and the law that nothing is going to remain the same and everything is subject to change. And if you cannot accept this law, you cannot truly live. There was this girl once, and she had an obsession with her desk. And the obsession that she had with her desk was she wanted her desk perfectly organized in every single way. I mean, even if you move anything on her desk an inch, I mean, she's going to be upset. She's going to be really upset. So one day, and she had this problem constantly, that every day she would spend so much time arranging her desk. Every day she would spend so much time organizing her desk, and still she wasn't happy about it. So she goes to her dad, and she goes to her dad complaining that, look, I'm so stressed about my desk. I don't know what to do. I arrange it every single day, but someone comes here and someone just messes it up, right? So her dad goes to her room, sees her desk, and asks her, like, is this desk perfect right now? And she says, no, it's not perfect. And she goes in there and she makes some arrangement, and she says, now it's perfect. And her dad goes in there again to the desk, and he moves one thing just a little, just like by an inch. And she's upset. She doesn't want it that way, you know. And this is where her dad gets it, and he says to her daughter that you have a million ways for this table to be unorganized, and you have just one way for it to be organized. And as long as you have that, guess what? You're going to be not happy. You're going to be stressed for a long time. So this is the problem that we have in our lives as well, right? That we have a lot of ways for things to go wrong, but we have only a tiny, very narrow way for things to go right. I mean, we all want everything to be a certain way. You can apply this situation to your entire life, that you want the people you know to be a certain way. You want them to behave a certain way. You want them to think a certain way. You want them to treat you a certain way. And you want your office to be a certain way. You want your desk to be arranged a certain way. And you want to drive your car at a certain way. And you think, by the way, this is really funny. You think that the only speed that you drive at is the exact true speed that everybody should drive at, and everybody else is an idiot, right? Isn't that true? Guilty of that as well. But you want, like, every single thing there is in, like, around you in your tiny little world, you want that to be the way that you want it to. And tell me honestly, what are the probable chances that every little piece that makes the world around you is going to be exactly the way that you want it? How about zero? There are no chances that that is going to happen anytime, all time. And even maybe in a perfect ideal simulation world, if you build a game, maybe you can do that over there. But even there, I think there will be too much variables to control. So the thing that we are leaning on here is, no matter how hard you try, there are influences that are beyond your control. There are things that you just can't influence. There are things that you just can't control. And then there's even a lesser sphere of the things that you can influence. And even then, there's even tinier sphere of the things that you can control. So what we try to do is we try to exert this sphere. And by the way, no matter how hard you try, you can extend it a bit, but the sphere that is beyond your control is so big, it's so magnanimous, that no matter how hard you try, no luck. It's not going to do any good. So the thing there's a better way to go about this. The one way is to be like, try as hard as you can to put a shield against the wind and try to shield yourself from the wind, right? Because every now and then you notice that wind blows and you're walking there and you put up a shield and you says, okay, I am going to fight the wind. And you can fight the wind, by the way. You can have a shield there, but it takes an extra amount of energy to go against the wind. And you can do that. It's your choice. But there's a better way. What if you just accept that there's wind? What if you just said, yes, every now and then wind blows. Yes, my hair is exactly the way that I want it to, and I'm going to a party. And yes, I'm wearing my tuxedo, and I don't want it to get ruined. But yes, wind blows. Guess what? I'll clean it off later. which way do you think is more easier for you, physically, mentally, emotionally, and maybe spiritually as well? Which way it is? I'm gonna make my bets on the second way, in where I say, okay, it ruins me a little bit, it ruins my hair, my tuxedo a bit, but I'll clean it off later. No big deal. And but the thing is, basically, primitively, we choose the second way. We choose to fight. And the reason is because we humans, we cannot accept uncertainty. Certainty is just so crucial to us that we want it all the time. We want certainty to be there every single time in every single situation, and it just can't happen. It is just against how the universe functions. And by the way, I don't blame you, I don't blame myself, I don't blame any humans, because our brain are hardwired to this way. Why are they hardwired? Because certainty equals comfort. Certainty equals comfort, and comfort equals safety, right? It's actually the other way around. It's comfort, it's certainty equals safety, safety equals comfort, and what safety also equals is survival. Because as long as you're safe, as long as you're in your tiny little cave and you're not going out there, you're safe, right? You're safe. You don't have to do with the tigers that roam around out there, and you can go on living as long as you have food, by the way, because when you lose food, then you have to go out and you have to get it. Even then, you try to stay in, you have a code, and if you're a hunter-gatherer, you try to stay to that code, and you try to get food, and you come back. And then if you think that there's a tiger, there's an opponent who is able to kill you, who is stronger than you, then you don't fight it, you flight. You run from the scene. So this is where you want to have, this is where we humans, our brain need certainty. But in the bigger world, there are just too many factors. And in that situation, actually, it's good. You need certainty. You need to know where the tigers are. You need to know where the food is. You need to know your way back to the cave. Because guess what? If you don't know that, you're going to be killed. The problem comes when we humans, what we try to do is we try to assert certainty where it's basically not much needed, like the wind blowing over your face when you're wearing the tuxedo going to a party that really means a lot to you. And that's when we don't accept that the wind can blow. That is where I think it leads to a problem. Other than that, in the situation, if you're a hunter-gatherer, good. Be a pessimist, have certainty. But now, by the way, one other thing that it's a tangent, but I think we'll take it, is that in the old times, the pessimists were the people who were rewarded. The pessimists were the people who told you, don't be bold, don't try to go on adventures, come back to the cave on time, don't go out in the dark, and if you see a tiger, run. This is like a pessimism behavior, because it tells you how to feel safe, right? It is like stay in your little shell, and that's good, because this is a society that time was functioned that way. The thing is, now in the 21st century, how many of you have ever gone out and encountered a tiger, a saber-toothed tiger who was just waiting there to kill you, right? I'm not saying that there are not dangers around, but I'm saying that the basic dangers, like for general population, we can talk about for most of the people, is like they can get food, they can get the basic, they can get their shelter, food, safety, stuff like this. This is done. And now I think we have covered the basic primitive desire for most of the society, and now this is where we are reaching for more. And by the way, now we don't need pessimism, we need optimism, we need bold claims, unless you don't risk like everything. It's like in game theory, something where it's called, you don't risk going to jail, it's like where you don't risk everything in your life, where you don't take such bold risk where everything is gone, like you risk your life, or you risk going to jail, or you risk going bankrupt. Like that is a big risk, and you should be careful when you're taking that. But other than that, if you want to take a risk on taking a different career path, good, do that. Be as optimistic as possible, while also see the downside. It doesn't mean that you should not see the downside, and if the downside is something that you can take, just definitely go for it, right? Take those big risks. Take those big risks. But that said, now let's come back to the thing that we were discussing, and that is your mind craves certainty. What should you do about it? The mind craves certainty while the universe is not that certain. The universe doesn't care about your mind. So I know that's a bit personal, but the universe really doesn't care about personal either. So what should we do about it? Now, this is where the Buddha himself taught us a few things about the mind that I think that are very insightful and that we can learn from. And one of those things is what the Buddhists call, and what I have built upon that for my understanding is, you can think of your mind as a computer. You can think of your mind as TV. In fact, this is actually what is happening, is that what you think that the outside world is there and I'm in here, right? And actually, the way that this is happening is, and you think that you're interacting with the outside world, which in a way you are, but in a way, what is happening is like you're seeing the outside world. You think that your vision from your eyes is going like this, but actually it's not. It's actually happening from the other side. And the way that this happens is your eyes are like sensors, right? Everything, by the way, all your senses are your sensors, right? Just like there's a sensor in this microphone that is picking up my voice and sending it to you through this video. There are also, through this video or this podcast, it depends on where you're listening or watching, there are also sensors in your body which pick up, they're also attuned, which pick up noises or other sensory data, and they deliver them to you. And the way your eyes, the sensing equipment of your vision, the way it works is there's light that hits the retina, and it goes back in signals to your mind. And these signals, you can think of them as just like digital signals, like zeros and ones, right? This data of all this data, that is all this light that is hitting your retina, goes back to your mind and to your brain, basically, not your mind right now, to your brain. And what your brain does is it actually builds the picture on it actually builds a picture based on the data that it gets, right? So and by the way, the data that it gets is it's not as refined as you see the world. There's a lot of distortions and stuff like that, and so it fills in the gap based on what it knows. So it colors things a little. And actually, this is very, from the word color, you know that there are no colors in reality. Colors are just a play of light. It's not like you can't say that this thing is golden, or this thing is golden. That actually says that you can say that the apple is red, and the sentence means that the apple is red. It means that red is actually an intrinsic property of the apple, that the apple is red. But actually it's not that way. What's happening is that light is coming on to the atoms of the apple, and it's basically reflecting back, and the surface is actually, it's white light is the light that white light, it has all the 7 colors of the spectrum. We know that that's basic physics. It has, I think, indigo, all the basically 7 colors of the rainbow. It has all that violet, indigo, blue, green, red, yellow, all these things. And what that does is, when light, which has all these different spectrums, it comes and it hits that apple, reflects back, hits your eyes. What that apple does, it actually absorbs all the other spectrums, all the other wavelengths, colors, same thing. It absorbs all the other wavelengths, and it reflects back only what the atoms allow, which is in the case of the apple, it's red. So it's not that the apple is red, it is a light that is reflecting back from the apple is only red light. And you can see that if you take it to a room where there's only red light, where there's only red, that's that wavelength which the apple reflects, and you'll see that you don't see any apple. The apple is black now. So it's not an intrinsic property of things. That color is not an intrinsic property of things. It's also play of light, and it's also how light hits your retina, and that's the way that you see things. Actually, in reality, things are not that way. Took me a lot of time to explain this physics, but it's actually worth knowing. And so what happens is, your brain, it constructs, your brain is a construction device, and it constructs a picture of reality based on the light that it is hitting the retina, in the sense of when it comes to your eyes, it also hears things and it also tastes, but basically all your senses. But we are only going to need the eyes right now. And think of this. It's like you're sitting in there. We don't know about you, by the way. That's a whole another topic about consciousness. Like, who am I who's sitting in there and who's seeing this? But it's like you're sitting in there and you're seeing a picture that is a motion picture of what's going on, that has been created by your brain. And this is so crucial to know, because what happens is, this is where the Buddhist concept of clinging and resisting comes in. And clinging and resisting, you can, I think in Freudian terms, you can say that clinging and resisting are your attractions and your non-attractions, the things that you don't want. There's your desire and fear, basically. The both of them, they come from here, but I forget the exact thing that you call them in Freudian terms, but you can see when we are going to go into it, and you'll see that you can compare the Buddhist theory of the mind and how Buddha saw the mind to Freud, and you would see, or Jung, or any other psychologist, or any other psychological understanding that we have of the mind, and you'll see that there are a lot of similarities. Like, Buddha knew what he was talking about. And so what they tell them is, let's say once you were going hiking with a friend, and as you were going hiking in the mountains, it was scary and all this, and a rattlesnake, it hisses, right? And everything in the universe, it has a vibration, right? And the vibration of the rattlesnake, it came into your senses, and you saw the rattlesnake, and the vibration was very uncomfortable, and as a result, you were freaked out. And that was a very natural reaction. You were freaked out by the rattlesnake. Now what happened is, that's a very unpleasant experience, right? And it's all good up to this time, until what happens is, the very experience of the rattlesnake gets burned into the screen of your mind. And the way this happens is, we had there were these, I've not seen them, but I've heard that there were these old TVs, and like I think they were cathode ray tube TVs or something like that, where if you stayed on a channel for too long, and you change the channel, what you would see is that the image of the previous channel was kind of imprinted upon the screen. And you would see, like, for example, you were watching news, and all of a sudden you switch to sports, and you see that, okay, sports is going on, but there's like you see an image of news anchor behind them, like, what's going on? This was a problem with those monitors. And this is also a problem with your mind, by the way, that when you resist something, this is, by the way, what happens is, the rattlesnake came in, it was a very unpleasant vibration, but you did not let that pass through. And what you happen is, you, inside your mind, inside yourself, you have hands of will, right? You have something called willpower. And because the vibration was too uncomfortable, you said, no, I'm not going to make myself feel this. I'm not going to allow myself to really digest it. So I'm just going to keep it in there, right? I'm going to keep it at a distance, and I'm just not like I'm going to use my hands in there, like your willpower, and I'm going to make it stay away from it. And as a result of you resisting it, that very image was imprinted upon your mind. This was what the Buddhists call resisting. There's also another side to it. It's like the more positive side. It's the things that you want. Basically, this is what the Buddhists call clinging. Clinging is, let's say that once you were in a beautiful garden, and a butterfly lands on your hand, and you say, oh my God, what a beautiful butterfly. And you have all this, you have this, it was just this most spontaneous experience ever. And you have such a beautiful feeling. Guess what? You, as a result, because it was so beautiful, it was so magnanimous to you, you thought, I want to have more of it. And as a result of having more of it, you find yourself in gardens every single week, or maybe every single day, and you're trying to have a butterfly land on it. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is, it's not every day that a butterfly has a mood of landing on you. Remember impermanence? And the second part is, even if the butterfly lands on you, there's something called the law of familiarity. Are you familiar with the law of familiarity? And the law of familiarity, or the law of diminishing returns in economics, is that even if you get the same experience, you're not going to enjoy it that much, because you've had that experience once, right? You consume more of a thing, the marginal utility of that thing drops down, right? That's a bit of economics right there. It's like Basically, the more you get a thing, the less you care for it, the less valuable it is to you. And guess what? Even if you have butterflies landing on your hand every single day, it will become May for you. You won't enjoy it that much, and you'll be craving the experience that you'll be clinging to the experience that you had the first time, but you're not gonna have it because that was spontaneous. This was not, and this is what the Buddhists call clinging. And the problem with resisting as well is it's not just the images imprinted on your mind, and every time, what would happen is now, and let's say 20 years later, you're sitting in a cafe and a friend of you says, let's go hiking. And all of a sudden, all that image you had of a rattlesnake hissing on your feet, it came back. And as a result, you feel so scared that you say, no, I'm not going to do that. Or maybe you were in a car driving down and you see the exact same jungle or the exact same track where you were going hiking, and you feel the same way that the rattlesnake made you feel. It's exactly like saying, I'll give you an analogy. It's exactly like saying you go to a restaurant and you have a very bad meal there. It's like you had the worst meal that you possibly can. It upsets your stomach and you're like, I don't want to ever come back here again. And just as you were about to leave the restaurant, you said to the manager, excuse me, Mr. Manager, can I have a lot of this meal? Can I have some of this meal so I can take it back to home with me? And I want to take it back to home with me because I want to remind myself of how bad this meal was every single day. Is that a logical thing to do? But we do that with our emotions. We do that with the bad experiences that we have. Is that you have a rattlesnake once? Fine. It was very uncomfortable. You should not have seen that. And when you see it, but it's uncomfortable. But you reminding yourself, you storing that in yourself and reminding yourself of that rattlesnake through every small, by the way, it's not just the hiking trail, and it's not just a friend talking about the hiking trail that reminds you. It's also if you see a rope that looks like a rattlesnake, you see you see a picture of a rattlesnake, and all these things. By the way, it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and all of a sudden you have a million ways for things to be wrong, and you have only one way for things to be right. And this is where you pigeonhole yourself, and this is what the Buddhists talk about when they talk about uncertainty. Is that when they talk about resisting and clinging, and the way to work with this and the way to work with impermanence is, when you're resisting, the reason we have a problem with impermanence is because of resisting and clinging. We are resisting certain experiences that the universe is giving us, and we're clinging to certain experiences that the universe at that time is not giving us, but we are still clinging to them. And that is the basis of the problem. So you might be thinking, like, what should I do with uncertainty? I know I made that mistake, but tell me what to do. And the only way that you can work with uncertainty is accept it. I mean, what else is there to do? What if one day you woke up and you had a problem with gravity, and you're like, oh my God, this gravity thing, I'm done with it. I don't want it anymore. Gravity, you are not good. You're bad. Even if you go write papers, and even if you go complain and you start a movement about how gravity kills people every single day because people jump from their building and you can blame it on gravity, and it's like, whatever you do, is gravity really going to give any F's to you? I don't think so. Is gravity going to change itself for you because it's so embarrassed about how many people it killed? No, no, it's not going to do that. So when you're not accepting change in your life, you're doing the same as, oh, I'm going to go against gravity and I'm going to go write papers. We're going to start a movement against gravity. You're doing exactly the same when you're not accepting change. So the best thing that you have to do, and this is where I think, even if there's a situation that is not the way that you want, the best thing that you can do is accept it first. Doesn't mean that it should remain the way that it is, or doesn't mean that you should give your input to it, but it would be much better if you accepted it. Like if you wanted to fly, let's say humans have wanted to fly. If you want to fly and you go start a movement against gravity and you go start complaining and whining about how bad gravity is it actually going to help you fly? No, you have to accept, okay, this is gravity. Let's see how we can use it to build a machine or build something that can get us up in the air. And that's exactly what the Wright brothers did. They worked with the base in mind. And the base was, there is a thing as gravity, and I know if we are not careful, we know that we're going to fall and it's going to get to us. But now we have planes and airplanes and air travel and all this thing and space travel and all of that. That is defying gravity. But the very first thing that it started with is that it started by accepting gravity. And so let's say there's a situation that you don't want to happen and it is happening. The best thing that you can do, even if you want to improve that situation, is accept it first. Because the exact example is, let's say if you can't handle a situation, right? Let's say your friend is involved in an accident and he has sprained his knee really, really bad, or he has hurt himself, injured himself in some way, and your friend is bleeding, basically bleeding all his blood out. And by the way, if you're someone who cannot handle the sight of the blood, I don't want you there, because you're not fit to help your friend. You're not the best person to help your friend, because guess what? Everybody who comes there, let's say people who come there, they say, I just can't handle the sight of blood. I cannot handle the sight of blood. And people are coming there, and just because you cannot handle the sight of blood and the people who are with you cannot handle the sight of blood, they're just fainting. They try to help the person and they faint, and they just faint and faint and faint. And the person is lying there bleeding and nobody can help him except the person who actually can handle and can accept that there is blood. And it's not that it's going to remain that way. The person is going to come in and he says, okay, I see this, I can accept this, right? I'm ready to accept that this has happened. What can I do to help him? What can I do to serve him? What can I do to heal this person? And that is where I think change starts. Because, and by the way, again, that is change. That is not staying the same. When you're saying that I can't handle it, you're staying the same. That is, you're again resisting. So again, the person that who can help is the person who can accept the sight of blood, the person that who can actually create change, or actually help a situation or improve a situation, or is the person who can accept the situation the way that it is first. And one of the things that is very core in your life is that if you want to do this, is that you have to accept uncertainty. You cannot not accept gravity. You cannot not accept electromagnetism. You cannot not accept that your Earth is a big blue dot. You cannot not accept that there's nuclear fission and nuclear fusion. You cannot not accept strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force. And in the same way, there's just fundamental laws of the universe that you just can't not accept. You can do your best, by the way. Nobody's stopping you from trying. You can try, but it's going to take a lot of energy and you're still going to fail. So the best thing that you have is that you can do is learn to handle reality. And I think part of it is see it as it is. That's the first step. And the second step is see it better than it is. And the third step is you can then go ahead and make it the way that you see it, which is better than it is. But the very first step is accept it. And the second step is then you can come up with a plan to improve it. Then you can come up with a plan to change things the way and make them a tiny bit, improve them, raise them in a way, right? Raise them in a good way. So with that said, accept uncertainty or face the consequences. Accept impermanence and accept that on every level. And I think the way to accept it is I think I referred this to in another podcast as well, that there was this director of some Japanese animation studio. They've also won a lot of awards, and he was walking out of the studio and somebody asked him, what do you think is going to make of the studio in the future? And he said, it's going to end. It is going to end. Like all good things, it is going to end, because nothing in the end remains the same, and everything in the end, everything perishes. And see, that is the game you're playing when you're playing life. That is the game that you have to play. Like, you know that everything is going to end, but you still do your best. You still give it your all, and you embrace the change, you embrace the uncertainty, and that is where you can play. Actually, this is where you actually start to accept the rules of the game, and now you're fit to play the game. Now, with that said, if you've enjoyed watching this video, or you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, whichever platform you're listening to, If you want free access to my ebook called 6 Principles to Lead a Truthful Life, you can download it for free with the link in the description, and we'll send it to you in your email, in your inbox. And with that said, I'll leave you the final note, that is, the greater the amount of uncertainty that you can accept in your life, the greater the quality of your life is going to be. Because the more uncertainty that you can accept, the more variables which are out of your control, which you can accept, and you're like, okay, I can accept them and I can work with them, the greater the quality of your life is going to be. And with that said, if you have enjoyed watching this video, don't forget to watch this video on my side. It also relates to physics, philosophy, and personal development. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Continue seeking truth and become a truth seeker.